And we're clickety click, 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 click. Yeah, we are live. It is 7:09 in the PM. So you guys are doing well. We had a great day today. I went to a soccer game, which was awesome. My son scored a goal, so he did fantastic. And it was a tie game. It was 1-1. But it was very, very cool. In fact, the other team that scored their goal from a shot that I had never seen before. The guy got a free kick, but it was from midfield. It was from exactly on the midfield line. And he shot it all the way right under the bar and shot it just perfect so that the goalie could not see because the sun, and just was it was an amazing shot. I didn't want to see it happen because I didn't want it to be a 1-1 tie. And this was late in the game because my son scored his goal early on in the first half. So, but good game. Lots of fun stuff. So all that's good. As you can see from the thumbnail, Jimmy has sent me some photos of the work that he's doing over there. Took all the turbo stuff off of the Tahoe and is putting the Rotrex on. So we managed to get the ATI damper on. So shout out to the ATI guys. Now without some work, as it always is. And even the Rotrex will be interesting to see. I want to talk to the guys about some things on this particular application to see if it's something that they have run into before, particularly with the mounting bracket hitting some things. So we want to see what's going on there. But he's got it on and it's working. So what we want to try to do is, the plan is, we already have the bigger injectors. We already have the pump in it. We already have the tune. In fact, our poll for tonight will be interesting. Turbo. Okay, so the poll for tonight is, will the E85 tune that they've done, Joel and Jimmy, that they have done for the turbo kit that we've been running on the GTX 3584 RS, with the 800 horsepower turbo, and then also the 1200 horsepower turbo. Now, we haven't run them anywhere near those levels, but we've run both of those turbos on this, and we started out running them basically blowing through the factory mass air meter. So at the power levels that we're at and the boost levels that we've tested at, we're getting near the limit of that setup. We also now have, Joel has put on the 3-bar map sensor. We'll probably put maybe do a flex fuel deal on it too, do some testing with that. But he's put a 3-bar map sensor on. So when Jimmy does the freshening up of the motor, we put rain gap in it and put the 4L80 transmission and a better drive shaft in it, we can turn it up when we have the ability to do that, because those things then will take that stuff, primarily the 350,000 mile 4L60 and that drive shaft. Because drive shaft, we're concerned about drive shaft speed. We don't want to pitch the drive shaft speed we don't want to pitch the drive shaft on a chassis dyno test. You don't want that to happen. I've seen that happen at West Tech, and it's not a good situation. So it's not safe for anybody there. So we don't want that to happen. So we want to upgrade that before we get, which is why we've been doing the runs in second gear. But so we've done lots of turbo testing with it, and we've shown, lots of response tests and everything. So as a side note, on the GTX 3584 RS turbo, very, very responsive. I've shown you videos where we've run it on the engine dyno, and we were up just over 800 horsepower at about 15 pounds or so. And we just had another guy basically verify this. Not that we don't have enough data already. It's fantastic of our customers to send stuff in. He was like 760 at the tire and 840 or 50 foot-pounds of torque with that GTX 3584 RS on his, I think it's a 5.3 combination. And so I think he's going to want to do twins on it or put the bigger turbo on it. And so he has done kind of exactly what we would expect on the chassis dyno, going from the engine dyno to the chassis dyno, exactly what we would expect to happen on this particular turbo. It's not for a guy trying to make, we don't recommend it for a guy trying to make 800 at the tire. It will, or 800 flywheel, 700 at the tire, let's say. So this guy's trying to push it a little bit beyond that. It's not the turbo I would recommend for that. If a guy's wanting to do that, I definitely would go G35, I probably would just go right to the G42 because if you're doing that, you're already tickling the area where the G42 is definitely going to be far superior. So you'll want to go that direction, and you'll pick up a lot of power once you're up at the level where you'd be maxing that turbo out. The bigger turbo is going to make more power, and so it's a better choice. And after we've driven it around, it's everybody's going to be happy with the response rate of that turbo, even on a 5.3. So it's good. But the little 3584, I say little, but I mean, it's 700 at the tire or whatever. That's very, very responsive, really good on these 4.8s and 5.3s and stuff. And even on a low boost 6-liter, again, 6-liter, I probably would go with the bigger turbo because it works good. But tonight we're not talking about that. All that stuff has come off. So the turbo manifold, the turbo obviously itself, the drain, all of that stuff has come off. And now Jimmy has installed the mounting bracket, the blower, and the belt, and the ATI damper, because it's a lot. It's more than just bolting on a blower, just hanging there like changing an alternator. It's not that. It's a whole thing. And so Jimmy has done that stuff and figured out a couple of areas where things could be changed or improved or whatever. So we'll talk to the guys about that. And what we want to do, what the plan is we would like to run this thing non-intercooled. We're running on E85. We like to run it non-intercooled. We might do some pump gas stuff just so that we can show people, yeah, we run it on pump gas and you could do this. It makes a lot less power because you got to take a bunch of timing out of it. But we'll show people, yeah, you can run it on pump gas. We want to run it non-intercooled and then also intercooled. And this is a situation where our intercooler setup for our turbo is probably going to work, maybe with just minor modifications and at the power level that we'd be running this at. Right now, with the pulley assemblies that they have supplied, the ATI damper, that size crank pulley, and then with the blower pulley, we don't know where the boost will be. We don't know where the boost will be on this stock 5.3 with that pulley combination. That's the only pulley combination that they supplied. And then also, because it's a centrifugal blower, you have to throw in RPM too. So at the RPM range that we're running this stock motor at, let's say 6,000 and lower, we don't know what the boost level is going to be. So we'll see. But the question for the poll tonight, in fact, I should have put that up there already. But the question for the poll tonight is, we have already tuned this thing. And by we, I mean, it's the Imperial we. Jimmy and Joel have already tuned this thing and spent a lot of time doing all the turbo stuff, and we drove it around. It works fantastic. But that tune, obviously, it's working under boost because it's basically just going through the mass air meter. Will that work with this Rotrex? So let me know what you guys think. Do you think that the same tune, it's just going to go like, hey, I recognize boost, and because we're blowing this much air through the mass air meter, the scaling's right, has the bigger injectors, has the pump, has all the stuff it needed. Will it work? Like right now, we're at 100%. Yes. So will we not even have to change the tunes? Change just all the boost. The tune is just all good for that, and away we go. We will love it if that's the case, and we kind of are leaning toward we think that that's the case. Whatever needs to be necessary, we'll do that, because you're picking flow rates versus we're not specifying boost here, which I think would be the way to go, because then we could do boost versus timing. But we're picking flow rates and stuff. And so I think that it's going to work out, because we have, it's scaled basically for this much flow or this much power, which would be this much boost, let's say, and this much timing. And so we'll see what happens. And because of the rising curve, if anything, we probably have less to worry about on the centrifugal blower than we do with the turbo, because especially with a smaller turbo, the turbo spools up like right now. And so we get boost really, really early. With the centrifugal supercharger, we'll have boost, but it just won't be very much, like at 3,000 RPM or 2,500 RPM. It's just not going to be a lot, depending on how they pulley this thing. Maybe they pulley it for 20 pounds, and when we nail it, we're going to have lots of boost. In fact, we'll have too much, and so we'll have to do something about that, because we don't want to run 20 pounds of boost on this thing, because there's no reason to do that yet. Like I said, we don't want to do that until we have the transmission and the drive shaft, and then also checking this thing for ring gap and leaks and stuff. The motor also has 350,000 miles on it. So It's plenty tired, I guess, but it makes good power like a lot of them do that we get from the wrecking yard. It soldiers on and keeps doing well. But Jimmy at least wants to put ring gap in it, and we'll do a razor blade rebuild on it. Just kind of fluff up the valves and stuff. Do the quickie drill and polishing compound kind of thing. The Super Richie razor blade rebuild. We'll make that happen. Probably put head studs on it, and we'll put ARPs because I like that stuff. I know people use other things. That's fine. You can use whatever you want. That's what I like. That's what I do. We'll put new head gaskets on it. Put MLS Velcros or LS9s or something. All of those are good. You're not going to blow a head gasket because the head gasket is no good. You're going to blow a head gasket because you did something wrong. And so on the 1540 horsepower Big Bang stuff, we didn't lift heads. We didn't blow head gaskets. We just ran out of map sensor. And we did that with a factory LS9 head gasket, which is too big of a bore for our little 5.3 that we ran it on. Oh, no, we ran it on a 6-liter. Still too big for a 6-liter. But, it works. It's not. Is it ideal? Probably not. Are there things that people could complain about? Yes, definitely. But did it work? Yeah, it did. We had really good head studs on that particular motor. We had those CA625 ARPs, which were good. But again, when people say, "Oh yeah, I lost the head gasket," well, was it the head gasket's fault? Because it can only do so much, or was it the timing's fault? So I want to do a test on this Rotrex. We want to do it non-intercooled, and we'll also do it intercooled. We'll obviously measure charge temperature and that kind of stuff. We'll be running on E85, so we'll have some safety margin there, and we'll run it safe in terms of timing and airflow. We're running in the 11s on a gas scale, and so it should all be fine. So it should all work out good. So we'll see how our pull turns out. The tune will work. I think, if we make, somewhere between 400 and 500 at the tire, or 550 or whatever the number turns out to be, I think that I honestly think that the tune could be okay. But again, that's why we test. But it'll be interesting to do the intercooled, non-intercooled thing and see what's going on. We will have a cold air setup for this, and then we'll run water through the air to water intercooler. All that'll be good. So let's see what you guys got going on. Hit the thumbs up button. Yo, Servo Centers in the house. Alan. Des Mangles. I'm sure I mangled that. DMC, what's going on? Long-time listener. Hoping service holds out. Trucking across Montana. Can't wait for the turbo kit. I know. I'm excited about that. These things take longer than I would like them to take. Took possession of my 11 L94. Nice. That's good. That's a good motor. That's definitely a good project motor. Did you ever get out to the car farm? I haven't gone out there yet. 85 will work very well on an undersized pulley for centrifugal supercharger. The timing curve will be slightly different, though. You can put more timing off the rip and the retard linear to PSI. Yeah, it'll be interesting, although the mass flow will be down quite a bit because there's no boost. So it might have more timing because of that anyway, but we'll see. We'll data log that and find out. The little turbo loses a bunch of VE at high RPM, but MAF should be fine. I don't think that's RPM related. It is in this case because if you're trying to get the boost pressure to hold steady at some elevated level, but it doesn't lose it because of RPM. So if you run it at 3 pounds, you can run as much RPM as you want, and it's not going to lose efficiency. But if you want to try to do 20 pounds at 6,000 or 7,000 RPM, then that could be more problematic. Work with the 2.2 turbo. We backed off. The deeper we got was a good reference for the 5.7 when the torque storm was added. We had a massive intercooler on both setups. Modesto's in the house, so you're not too far away. Thinking you should be a little leaner on E85 with the blower as you go up in RPM. Why should we be leaner? Why would the blower want to be leaner? And actually, what a lot of people don't realize with the blower is you're actually making more power with the blower than is showing on the dyno, or either the chassis dyno or the engine dyno, because you have power associated with driving that. That's load on the engine too. So you might think, oh, look, that's only 700 horsepower. But it's not really 700 horsepower. It might be 750 or 800. The equivalent load on the motor might be that, which shows in fuel usage. Oh, you're thinking we will be leaner at the top? You're so Steve, 7. You're thinking that we were have to pull fuel away. Only 5 more heads to go. Then found another Omni 5-speed. Huge stash of parts. Going to have to watch the visor videos again. This grouping has been getting only superchargers. All of those 2.2s have been getting superchargers. Colder air charge and the load on the engine. What do you think is colder? You think that the centrifugal supercharger is going to have a colder air charge at any given boost level than the turbo does? What's up, Rich? I have 2 Gen 4 5.3 rods and pistons, one from an LY5 and one from an L86. Can I mix and match them? Even the face is different, right? I don't know. You would have to measure them. And by measure, I mean, you're going to have to weigh them. You're going to have to weigh the big ends and the small ends and make sure that those rods are the same. Because I don't know. I didn't know that there was more than one different kind of Gen 4 rod. But that doesn't surprise me. But you need to make sure that the weights are the same. You'll have to add fuel for E85. Yeah, all of our testing has been on E85, or it will be certainly to start out with. And then if we want to go 91, we'll run a 91 tune on it. Have you ever had a motor make more power in 87 versus 91? What could cause this? Or was the guy talking out of his tailpipe? We get people that say that, but those are normally the same people that say, oh, it's because of the burn rate. The burn rate of 87 is better than 91 or something. And I just have never seen that. I had never seen if the motor will run with full timing at temperature on 87, sometimes 91 won't make any more power if you aren't able to change anything. But I haven't seen too many motors, except for really like a low compression smog motor, like an older 440 or 454 or something like that. That's like 7.5 or 8 to 1. You can run it on 87. Putting 91 in is probably not going to do anything. I've never seen it make more power on 87 though. Supercharger will be cooler than a turbo. That hasn't been our test data. I got an L96 6-liter with 823 heads. I'm going with a truck plus cam and a VS Racing 80 millimeter turbo. I plan on running pump gas or 85 with air-to-air intercooler. What would I expect for horsepower? You would expect the power to be at whatever level you turn the turbo up to. So are you going to max the turbo out? On pump gas, you won't be able to do that because you won't have enough timing and you won't have enough octane. On E85, you probably could max out an 80 millimeter VS Racing turbo. I don't know specifically which one it is, but you probably could max that out and go into 4 digits. Whatever the turbo is going to dictate whatever power output you make. What's up with BTR heads? Is Brian Tooley having trouble with manufacturing? Was really wanting some for my 5.3. They probably would have some available. He said he had some available for me to test naturally aspirated, but they are working on stuff. And if you watch the video that I did, the interview video I did with him, he goes into that. M90s, yes, better for the street, and so far proving better on the autocross course. Okay, you're putting M90s on the 2.2s. Okay. My F2 Pro Charger tune is richer as boost goes up. My target air fuel at 4 psi is 8.7, 8.2 at 16 pounds. Yeah, that's fine. You can do that. You can play with that. I've not played with any liquid propane. And you also obviously can have more timing at 4 psi than you do at 16 psi. 290 horsepower, 310 to 330 foot-pounds, 2 Gen 5 and 1 Gen 3 M90. And that's on the Dodge motors? On the 2.2s? Okay. Do they have intercoolers on them? 87 will make more power than 91 if the 91 sits in the tank at the station longer and collects water, which happens a lot more than people think. We've run tests on it and have never seen that. So I don't know what this is. It's, to me, it sounds like an internet myth, but I've never experienced that, and neither has Brule and neither has Freiberg that I know of in any of their testing. I don't know why. Like I said, the people that talk about that, oh, it has higher octane, so it burns slower. I'm like, that's not an accurate statement. Those two things are mutually exclusive. Sending them out to get rotors, thermal coating. Okay, on the centrifugal supercharger, carb tuning has been a hurdle yet to overcome. 2.2s, but are all running E85. Okay. Yeah, I would think at the boost levels that you'd have to run to get 290 horsepower from those, that from a positive displacement blower, intercooling would definitely be a good idea. I run 2005 Ion with an Ecotech 2.2, a 3800 series supercharger on E85 with Haltech. That's cool. Did your Ecotech originally come with a smaller, like M62 supercharger or an M45 supercharger? Because some of those, like the Cobalts and stuff, came with little superchargers on them, and they weren't M90s, right? They were smaller than that. Will the 85 tune for the turbo kit work on the Rotrex? 82%. Any cool test videos coming up? What am I going down there to do next? Yeah, the Rotrex will be the next one. And then also the exhaust. The exhaust test on the turbo stuff. Around 2005 Ion with an Ecotech. Okay, it wasn't originally a supercharged version. It was naturally aspirated. Okay. Cool. That's also good. We like NA motors. We like the all motor stuff. What do we got going on here? Let's see. Intercooler on the centrifugal just over 324 breaks up at 5200. R5 cam, but the engine is a 2.5 T1. Okay. Is it you're not doing it as a draw through, right? And so like what intake manifold and everything does it have on it? Picked up an entire L59 takeout. Plan on swapping the PCM with my LM7 truck and testing the stock E85 tunes. Okay. Cool. L59er. Gen 3 iron block. Essentially a flex fuel version of the LM7. Okay. So does that mean it already has good injectors on it? Sorry, already got the big boy injectors on it, the flex fuelies. Flex fuelie heads. Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I think I'm most curious to see. See, I got attacked by my dog there. He was so excited. I'm curious to see what the boost curve is going to be on the Rotrex. It will be interesting. I think the timing table is just a +5 across the board. Stock 36-pound EV6 injectors. Okay, those aren't the 50s on that. You should do a big power rec port LS and put adapter plates on it and run an LS4 intake to see how bad it is, to see how much it kills it. We have done an LS4 intake test, and it's pretty abysmal. Draw through early T1 electronics. They're easier to find, complete in the yards. Hence, let's see what they can do. Okay. Once I plug it in, it'll rip. I'll rip the tune and see all the differences. Okay, that'll be cool. Let me know what happens. And 36-pound injectors obviously can get you a lot further than 24s or 25s. Because those are no bueno. Fuel injector flow, 33 pounds at 50 psi on the return style, 36.658 psi on the, interesting, I don't know why they would, on the 2005 to 2007. So if you turn the fuel pressure up, you could make the 33s into 36s, I'm guessing. 3 pounds, 3.5 pounds. So obviously we need an adjustable regulator. 50 and 54 are just the E85 6-liter and 6.2s. Okay. Stock LSA injector, similar in size, but a unique spray pattern. Does it have a weird tip on it that sprays it out at some sort of weird angle? You'll lose 50, I bet. Yeah, if it was if we put it on like a 600 or 650 horsepower rec port headed thing, I could see 50. Because I think the LS1 was almost down that much compared to a fast. If I remember right. Dyno results. Cathedral port 6.0. Intake shootout. What's up? Oh, but I don't have the LS4, but LS1, that's good. And then, I don't know, let's look at a fast. $535 and $591. So that's a fast versus the LS1. So the LSA is, or the, yeah, the, no, not LSA, LS, what is the LS4? Yeah, that's going to be way down. I'll bet that's got to be 20 down on the, on especially on that motor. It's got to be 20 down on the, compared to the LS1 intake manifold. 2002, 2003, 04 to 13 injectors are identical. It's just the return rail that shows a different rating on Google. Yeah, they were showing a different fuel pressure, different system pressure on the ones with regulators under the hood versus the PWM stuff. Back to cylinder head porting, only a few left to do. I'll keep you posted. I did save one of each head stock for science. There you go. My F2 Procharger will hit 21 pounds of boost in 0.4 of a second in first gear because it blows the tires off and hits the 7,500 rev limiter. Yeah, that's pretty fast. It likes it. If you can get that RPM to happen that fast, boost happens really fast. technically the LSA is the best stock intake manifold? The best stock LSA intake manifold? Yeah, I think it's going to be more than 50 if we test it on a decent motor. What was it when we tested it? I don't even remember what I tested it on. Was it a 5.3? Does anybody remember what I tested it on? There's a lot. I'm sure I tested on the L33, right? I mean, I had to have. Because that would be the one that I've done the most testing on. Lots of single plane, dual plane stuff. Blower test. Forward blower. I'm still looking. I'm searching. Cam test. I got that. Yeah, I don't know. I have to search for that. It was a 4.8. I guess it could have been. What's it worth? Wasn't that what hurt the 4.8? Belt-driven intake is better than a non. Victor Harbor's in the house. What's going on, Chris? Still building my 6-liter from HG Broham. Can't wait to try the GT42. The G42, yep. A couple more months, it should be go. Building a new house. Best plenum I've heard about. P59 benefits from tune on MN pump. What do you think about a fuel injector that works like a nitrous fogger except for high pressure air instead of nitrous? Why are you injecting air? That would be my question. Oh, I had someplace else I could look too. It wasn't in there. I have like secret areas that nobody knows about. Dyno results. Yeah, there we go. What do we got? What do we got? And we're clicking, we're clicking, we're clicking. Cadillac blower test. Not seeing it. I don't even remember how long ago that was. It was a while ago, though. Big turbo test. I like that. I like seeing the turbo stuff. I have a 383 stroker. I need some help. Go ahead, Mike. Ask away. L59 benefits from tune. I would think that factory, if you have a flex fuel deal and you're able to put E85 in, and because the way that the factory runs these motors, running them hot and limiting timing, that if you get rid on an NA motor, if in the vehicle, if you get rid of all of the knot counts, and then it allows you're running 85, you get rid of the knot counts, and it allows the computer to run, if it will do that, if it will allow it to run full timing, 28, 29 degrees, where the thing is going to make the most power, I can see how you could definitely pick up power from that. But if it won't add enough timing, then, it's the gains are not going to be great. John, how... John, I don't really understand where the air is coming into play. Are you just trying to run lots of fuel pressure so you have tiny droplet sizes? I don't know how you're going to run the system, how you're going to force fuel in with air pressure. Guys have tried to run, I mean, they do that in direct injected stuff. The fuel pressure is obviously very high. And so there'd be more shearing, and theoretically the droplet size would be smaller. But I don't necessarily know that that's going to turn into power. Seeing E85 turn or add timing on my girlfriend's Honda Pilot. Yeah, I don't doubt that it does it. I just don't know from the factory, like, how much they'll allow. Like, if we have more octane or it's colder or whatever, how much more timing will it allow? Because we know from running it on the engine dyno that around 29 degrees at the horsepower peak is where these things are going to make peak power. So if you can get them to run there, that's where they'll make the most power. But they'll only do that if you have enough octane. And then the E85 adds some cooling and stuff too, which is good. But if you put the E85 in and the factory ECU is in control, and it only allows you to go from 21 or 22 degrees to 24 degrees, you'll gain some power, but not as much as you would if you put all the timing in it, if it won't allow that. I just don't know what those parameters are on the factory ECU. When you add E85 to a Coyote, it adds a lot of power. Or to probably also to an LT, I would imagine. Will the 85 tune for the turbo kit work on a Rotrex Supercharger 8020? It's funny how it's mostly yeses, and then the no's start trickling in. The no's. Stock timing is 18 gears at wide open throttle in the trucks. Camaro is like 22. Where is it 18 degrees? You mean down low? It's not going to be 18 degrees at the horsepower peak. This will be good because I'll be able to look at this stuff. I'll be able to look at the factory timing curves. And from what I've seen, the factory timing curve varies a lot with other variables. It varies a lot with, obviously, air temperature. It varies a lot with water temperature. It can be a lot of different things. I had another comment that said the R word. Maybe it didn't show you. I don't know what R word is. Timing retard? Factories also limit timing for emissions too much, and the NOx goes way up. Brittany Force went 343. I saw that. I saw Freiberger made a post on that. And I think Brian Loans did too. It's pretty cool. That's fast. Her dad, John, must be proud. Proud of his girl out there making it happen. John, your comment on droplet size. I tried to do that. We tried to jack fuel pressure up to see if we could add fuel pressure and then take away duty cycle to do what you're talking about. We were really mostly concerned with fuel mileage is what we were trying to do. But you could also try it with power, and we didn't see anything with power. We didn't, like, if we went from 40 psi to 60 psi or 80 psi and then had the same air fuel, it made the same power. We didn't really see anything from that. Now, we're not trying 1,000 psi, anything like that. But in the normal range of stuff, we didn't really see anything. Basically, stock timing tables are really soft. There's a knock R multipliers, but I've never actually hit them. Knock retard multipliers. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in a factory deal. Fogger runs at 8 psi fuel and 0.9 K psi nitrous. 900 psi is what you're talking about? And the fuel comes out in micron size droplets. You think that the nitrous is on a fogger, that the nitrous is doing that? I would be surprised if the fuel droplet size on a nitrous setup, on a single fogger nitrous setup, if the fuel droplets are smaller than they are in fuel injection. Two cams have the same overlap, but different specs. Do they sound the same? No. A cam with much less duration, but the same amount of overlap is a smaller cam than one with lots of duration and the same amount of overlap. One of those is going to have a way different LSA, though. Forgot to ask one more question for my 4302 build. What piston and connecting rod should I get for a 360 horsepower build? The stock ones. You can put forged pistons in it, but I don't think you need anything more than a stock connecting rod. But there are cheap ones out there. There's lots of stuff from China that's most of them are going to be 5400s, and then most of the pistons assemblies from JE or Wiseco or Bullet or CP Carrillo. All of those guys, or Summit probably has pistons also for the Ford. I would just get one that has the valve reliefs that you need, and think about valve reliefs for later on. So do it for now, but plan for the future also. And the Ford stuff is pretty inexpensive, but 360 horsepower just needs, we have done that lots and lots with stock stuff. So you can kind of decide what you want there. I don't know that I would ever replace cast pistons with other cast pistons or hyper-eutectic pistons. I think I would, if I was going to do that, I would either run the cast pistons, the stock ones, or put forged ones in. And then I would put valve reliefs in so I could run camshaft in it, because that's one of the limitations of the stock stuff, of the stock pistons anyway. That's always seems to be a problem with most of the factory motors, big blocks, small blocks, all of them, that they don't have enough piston valve clearance for putting a, if you're wanting to make serious power and put it like a real camshaft in. And the Ford obviously has that problem. My roommate does masters on air fluid injector. I don't think it's made its past research. Small droplet sizes with thicker fluids. I think that's what Mr. Clary was thinking of trying to do. Yeah, from experience, I'd never run hyper-tactics. I'd like to see people run really elevated fuel pressures just to see what happens. The problem is that the kind of testing that's necessary, and honestly, it's probably already been done a lot, but the kind of testing that's required to determine whether or not that's something is really time-consuming and expensive. That's why a lot of that stuff doesn't get done, because people don't have that. They don't have the time and the money. Let's see. No. I thought that there was some kind of magic. What's a rule of thumb on primary header tube diameter for turbo application? 6-liter tram for 700 wheel horsepower. Is that important? It's not important at all. I don't know that you'll ever find anything that's inch and 5/8. More than likely, if you do a tube style header for a turbo application on an LS, it's going to be inch and 3/4. What does compression ratio and boost do to fuel droplet size? Well, the smaller the droplet size, the more surface area you have, and the quicker. Like if you could get it to be a vapor, that would be better. But that's hard to do. That's the extreme. I want to say angle, but that's not. That's the end goal of droplet size, is just have it be a vapor. Because then it's easier to get a homogeneous mixture, and you could do complete burning, and there would be lots of benefits. So if you could do complete burning, you could hopefully convert more of, you could extrapolate more or extract more of the energy from the fuel. You can convert more of it, and that's what they're trying to do. And if you can get it to the like I said, the smaller the droplet size, the better surface area, the better the conversion. You get more complete burning. You know, you've supplied the same amount of fuel. Now you take some of that fuel away and get the same amount of energy that you needed. That's how fuel mileage happens and all those things. But there's a limit to that. I've had my F2 E85 setup running for 7 years, was using 1,200 pounds of fuel. IATs were 160, boost is 27. Now fuel is 1,000. IATs are under 121 PSI and makes much more power. So what did you do to change your combination? Something else happened here that's not fuel related. That's the extreme ideal. That's why modern diesels run 30,000 PSI rail pressure. Yeah. I think that part of the ideal solution also might be to superheat it. But that's also problematic. I was reading that the Gen 5 heads aren't designed to keep fuel in suspension. Maybe that's why they seem to lose power with port injection. What in the head design would stop suspension? Would it be surface texture like people talk about all the time? Oh, you can't make it smooth because then all the fuel comes out of suspension. I don't know that that's true about the fuel that's primarily in the center of the port and not touching any of that. But, you know, there's always a lot of questions. But you would think that, I guess, at an internet level of reasoning, that stands to reason, because it's direct injected, so they don't have to have fuel atomization. But I honestly don't think that even a port fuel injected motor relies on atomization in the port. I think it does all that with the injector. That's the extreme ideal. That's why modern diesels. Oh yeah, that was good. Apparently the 300cc ports are an issue. I think it was Mamo ranting about it on some forum. Yeah, again, I love Tony Mamo. I think he's an awesome guy to hang around with. But what I would want to see is an SAE paper level of somebody testing that to see what's actually going on. And you can imagine how are you going to measure droplet size? How are you going to measure how much fuel is in suspension and not in suspension before it goes into the port? You know, it's a lot of stuff. It's a really, really sharp guy that would come up with the right test procedure and to figure that out. It would be more than me running on the engine dyno. It'd be a lot more than that. So we're going to end our poll at 82.18. Thinking that the Rotrex is going to be okay on the turbo tune. And we got 2 minutes left. So get those questions in. God, it's Throw a shout out to Jimmy. Tighten connecting rod bolts to 930 foot-pounds or 120 pounds pull on the wrench handle, 96 inches long. That's awesome. Tighten piston pin bolts to 1,500 foot-pounds or 250 pounds of pull on the wrench handle, 72 inches long. Checked out for 24 hours. That's some serious stuff. That is some serious con rods. Did you see Steve May, a clear intake? I haven't seen it. I'll have to watch that. I like that stuff. I know this channel is mostly engine related, but how feasible is it to DIY a Turbo 400 or 4L80 rebuild? It's not hard at all. There's lots of stuff online for that. A Turbo 400, particularly because it's not electronic, but a lot of the stuff would be similar. I do know that raised seats and valves on intakes will kill atomization and power. Those sharp angles help the fuel form droplets instead of just dribbling into the cylinder. I have seen, like, we've watched fuel with strobes and video entering ports and stuff, and it's really amazing. I mean, and we've watched it with carburetors and we've watched it with fuel injection both, and it's very, very cool. So I could see where having seen stuff hit walls and stuff, where the valve job would be a critical thing. And you guys, I mean, NASCAR looks into that stuff a lot. What are your thoughts on a turbo setup for daily driver trucks, say a 5.3 or 6.0? I've seen folks on forums bashing daily turbo setups. If it's tuned right, I don't know why it would be a bad thing. There are some 800 horsepower builds made the most power with dual feed. They tested port alone, DI alone, and both. Port alone was the worst. Well, it would make sense that the only thing I'm thinking about is in that port, if you're running the fuel direct injected, you're not displacing the airflow potential with fuel. And so that could add power. If it was port injected only, you definitely displace that. If it's directed injected only, you wouldn't. If you had maybe the right amount of direct injection and port injection, that maybe you also could get fuel cooling, the minimal amount that you would get to provide the fuel cooling, but not displace a bunch of airflow. And that would be probably airflow and power level dependent. And methanol, Travis, would be the worst thing to displace it because it takes so much of it. Danny, been hanging around eating pizza. We had pizza last night. We'll be talking about this on another live feed. And in fact, I had it for lunch today. It was awesome before the soccer game. On that note, it is time to go, but I will see you guys all tomorrow.